Yeah, get to the lighters in a moment. Jacob, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah, excited to sit down, talk. Make sure you get the mic a little closer to your face. You might have to face forward a little bit. We're going to talk about a few things today. I wanted to ask you about poetry.
Yeah.
You being a poet. Specifically the removal of gatekeepers in that industry, and maybe how something like TikTok has led to a new form for people to express themselves in the poetry realm. Also going to play guitar for the intro here, so got to keep the nerves under wrap until then, because I told you it's the first time I play guitar. So
yeah, I'm excited to hear you play guitar.
And you're also going to give us some poetry. You're going to read for us a little bit.
Yes, I am.
Nice. So lots to look forward to. Been trying to think more about like previewing things at the beginning, actually like letting people know what they're getting in for, you know?
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's get started here.
That's
Episode
great.
53. You know, I thought of one thing I forgot to do, which is tune the guitar before getting started. That's the one thing I didn't get to all day. Had the AC on while I was setting up here, so that definitely helped me out. But tuning would have been good, you know. Next time.
It still sounds good to me, man. I appreciated you. Part of this experience.
Yeah.
First time playing it.
Well, actually, I'm going to auto-tune our voices, too, immediately after this. So there's going to be a very small amount of legitimate content that's actually occurring in the room here. Let's get to some categories. I'm going to do some free association. I just want to hear your thoughts, feelings. You can share some anecdotes, whatever comes up. First one being caffeine.
Love it.
Nice.
Drinking some green tea now.
I was going to say have a sip of the coffee here.
Yeah. I'll take a sip right now.
We have to appreciate it if we're going to talk about it, right? Second one I have for you is YouTube.
Yeah. Podcast, No Dunks Inc. That's where I watch and stream my podcast from.
Excellent.
And that's obviously your podcast will be there too. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little self-referential with some of these categories. Of course, you gotta push the brand, right?
Subscribe. That's the thing. That's key. That's key.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
what
you,
I've been
Jacob.
hearing all over. Is subscribe.
I'm glad you got my 7 to 9 emails I sent you in the last week, reminding you to do that. I appreciate that. Actually, when you think of YouTube, is like podcasts in general, is that the first thing that comes to mind, or is that just the number one thing you watch on podcasts? Are you aware in this moment that this is going on YouTube, so it's impossible to deny with the cameras? That's what's
right.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, of course, obviously being here and recording this podcast that'll be later featured on YouTube makes me think of that. But I also think of, I just like watching videos, just random clips. I was recently watching bunch of clips last night and past week, I guess, of Conan O'Brien and his like interviews. And
he's been making the rounds because his last show was last night.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I caught most of it live. But yeah, so that's a little sad, but it's also good to sort of revisit old clips and old bits of his. And
best time for it.
Yeah.
And YouTube's a gold mine for that sort of stuff. Congrats to Coco.
Yes,
for finishing up. That's awesome. Although he's going to HBO Max, right?
Yeah, he'll be all right.
Honestly, we're all being upgraded. That's what I wanted for him 20 years ago.
Right.
A lot of people, you know.
Yeah.
He decided to take over the Tonight Show. It's like, you did late night. Maybe let's see what else you got. Yeah. Well, he did The Simpsons too. He's done a lot, right?
And SNL. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are we saying here? Okay, next category, pickup basketball. Of course, got to ask you about pickup basketball.
Love it. That's how we met.
That's right.
Actually, pickup basketball at Grosse Park.
Yeah.
I love I just loved having to meet you guys there, and y'all invited me to the game, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad that it's back up during this time.
I missed it. It was one of the top things I missed.
Me too.
During Corona. Yeah. And then you play with other people too, right? You get some games in other places.
Yeah, it was mostly we haven't got together. My other group was like indoor groups, and the Park District are still like figuring out their the protocols and stuff of.
Are they still waving people off? Get out of here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Come around.
But it looks like one of our main. So it was Monday night hoops game up at Eckhart Park in Chicago, and
people might show up one day if you're.
Yeah. Well, if it gets going again, we'll see.
You're trying to get some bodies. Yeah,
our main leader left. Yeah, so he moved back to Massachusetts, and
that's too bad.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk specifically about how tenuous some of these pickup games can be, and how it can be dependent a lot of times on an individual personality, right?
Yeah, it has to be somebody who's willing to do the work of, at least with the indoor games, it seems, of of like coordinating, emailing everyone, paying the fees, collecting the fees from guys, and from people.
Arpit's our commish.
Arpit is the commish.
So he's the man.
Thank you, Arpit.
Thank you, Arpit. You're the bomb. Next one we got, breakfast.
Cereal, oatmeal. Those are my go-tos.
You said cereal. It sounded like cereal. I don't know if it's just because we're podcasting. It sounded like you were talking about the podcast cereal for a second. Like cereal or cereal. Anyway, it was just exactly my mind. Okay, next one, a little left turn. Loneliness. What comes to mind for loneliness?
Partner, pets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful that this past year that I was living with my partner, my girlfriend, and didn't really have to experience too much loneliness or have that feeling of loneliness. It's been a while because there's a difference, right, between loneliness and aloneness.
Absolutely.
And I can
tell you're good with words.
I haven't felt that. Thank you. I haven't felt that loneliness, in a while. But that's because of my partner, because of our pets, because of our family, and but yeah, I mean, it's just
some plants. I assume if you're millennial, got to have a couple of plants.
Yeah.
And
my girlfriend does for sure. Those are her plants.
There you go.
Yeah. I like your plants over here in the corner that are off camera. Right
now.
We're
surrounded. Yeah, you're always. That's a big deal. Even the garden plants are flanking the outside wall, maybe giving us some sound absorption protection here. Okay, we did loneliness. How about lioness?
Lioness. Wow. I would go to the Lion King.
Come on, right?
What was the mom's name? I can't remember.
Nala.
Thank you.
I was in a production of the Lion King when I was 5 years old, literally. So
word.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. My kindergarten, we did like a graduation ceremony. Actually, Arpit was Rafiki and I was Simba, and he like hugged me at one point we were 5 years old during the kindergarten graduation. The whole crowd went crazy.
That's awesome.
It's amazing. Arpit and I were best friends for that long, by the way, too. So
that's crazy. I love it.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the person who played Nala was named Nissa too.
Wow.
Part of me like wonders, like, did they give her the role because she had the closest possible name? Like, how did this even happen?
Yeah.
It was right when the movie came out too, because I graduated. I don't know, it was 95 or 96. It was right on the heels of Elton John ringing out through the airwaves.
That's right.
Everyone
Can you feel the love tonight?
Everyone being full fan mode still for that. Next one, Lionel Richie.
Oh my gosh. Commodores, All Night Long. Easy is one of my favorite songs.
Struck a chord, great.
Yeah. I love Lionel Richie. He also did, maybe you've heard it, that he covered with Rob Zombie. They did.
I did not hear this.
Brick House. They did like a version of Brick House, like in the early aughts. I must be. I have it's like I have this Rob Zombie like greatest hits CD, and it's on there, and I didn't even know that they had done it before then. And yeah, it's like Brick House 05 or something. I don't know what it is. Whatever year they recorded it together, that's what they named it. And
that's a collab. I gotta check that out.
You gotta check it out.
It sounds like right before YouTube was big too. Mm-hmm. So if they would have maybe. Was there a music video that had some good?
I haven't looked it up, but that's something we should check out on YouTube.
Back to the YouTube, of course. Okay, just three more here. Thank you for humoring me. Those are all the L words. Loneliness, Lioness, Lionel Richie. Of course, Lionel only coming up because he's too close to Lioness.
Yeah.
Next, we have the self-help genre. The genre of self-help.
It's not really my genre. I mean, I help myself to various things and, read up on various things to try to help my mental health and my physical health. But I don't actually buy self-help books or
no, everyone illegally downloads them. I hear you loud and clear. No, but that's just curious because obviously it seems to be something that is rising almost in tandem with the cult of personality type phenomenons we're seeing. People wanting answers, maybe the superhero fandom that's occurring now with Marvel.
Yeah,
getting into my own things. Two more here. Next one, obviously another thing of my own I can't get over. It's an obsession of some sort. Cryptocurrency.
Don't know too much about it.
That's all right.
I know that didn't
You know what? No, you know enough to say you don't know too much about it. You're not gonna like pretend like like, oh, it's this thing where whatever.
Yeah.
What a lot of people do,
Yeah.
So it's very powerful that you're like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on there.
I had this clip, or there's this clip that my friend showed me years ago of with BitConnect or whatever was like this thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's just this guy yelling out BitConnect. He's like on the thing. It was a very popular like viral video, and so that's what I think of.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Wait, that was in a John Oliver piece on Bitcoin, I believe.
Yeah.
John Oliver did an amazing video on Bitcoin 2 years ago, really ahead of his time almost. And actually, I think he had the funniest joke about Bitcoin I still have heard to this day. Bitcoin is everything you don't understand about technology with everything you don't understand about money.
That sounds about right.
Exactly.
So it's a very niche audience and of the uber wealthy, I feel, and uber technological. I don't know.
We can get into it. I got to move on to the last category here. It can be a category every single time, but also, I'm curious what the demographic of the Bitcoin ownership will ultimately be. It's highly concentrated. I'll say that there are certain individuals or small quote wallet holders that have like a huge amount of the wealth. Same for Dogecoin and some of those other ones. Doge, I think, is like 4 people that own half of it.
Wow. So
it's very pyramid looking, possibly, if I could use a certain word.
Yeah.
Last one we got here: food.
Love it. Mexican food. I was thinking of picking up some Mexican food after this at Michoacan, Lindo, Michoacan, right there on Lawrence and Kedzie. But I think my partner's not going to want to eat dinner that early, so I'll hold up.
Well, Mexican, it heats up well. I feel like you could.
Yeah, I think she wants something else, though. She wants... there's a spot we like called Monty's, actually down the street from whatchamacallit, Grosse Park. It used to be, then it burned down. Now they're in like a ghost kitchen somewhere on Rockwell. And but yeah, it's like a Philly cheesesteak joint that we really liked. And
you got lots of good possibilities for dinner then.
Yeah, I think we're gonna go with Monty's.
Something with some steak in it, something with some red meat.
Probably.
Yeah, keep the iron in your blood for tomorrow. We'll be playing basketball soon here, right? So
hopefully. I mean, it's kind of,
in case it doesn't rain.
Kind of rainy.
On to things that we can control. I mentioned wanting to talk about the removal of gatekeepers, maybe in publishers, in poetry. This is something I don't know anything about. I know this is happening with video, self-evident by the fact that we're possibly being watched on YouTube or something that has free distribution, right? Occasionally with ad. But what is going on? Is there a revolution with like poetry, with publishing of poetry, with how it's released, with the proliferation of ebooks? Do you have any feelings one way about it? What's going on? Help educate me as to what's going. Because you had something published specifically. That was the last couple of years. You worked on a collection of works and you put together a piece, correct?
Yeah, for sure. I put together a book of poems, Throwing the Crown, which won a poetry contest, which is one way to sort of get published beyond. There are various venues and various ways to get published, of course. But I decided to try my hand at the contest route, which basically means submitting fees, paying these entry fees for these contests that are just sort of like a crapshoot, really, because you have to have... there are readers and screeners for every contest. So you have to get past that screener, and then you're passed on to another, like the beyond screeners, maybe like an associate editor of a press or something. And then it maybe goes to the judge or whatever. And so I think, I don't know. I don't really know if I have a good, clear...
you don't have to. And I'm sorry, sometimes... People are asked to represent their whole industry.
Right.
It's like if you're asking me what's going on at Paramount or, down at YouTube headquarters or something, it's like, I don't know, all video things. Like, I understand that. But it sounds very, very much like a meritocracy in that you're like, you have to almost win a contest a lot of times to get attention or to make sure you have, I don't know, traction or validity in the community.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that goes across all industries, really. But definitely in the poetry world, from what I've experienced, I've had some success getting published before actually having the book published, just getting poems published in different journals and winning, prizes, specifically from the Poetry Foundation, which are the, which runs Poetry Magazine, which is the largest, longest running magazine of verse in the U.S. English speaking language. Yeah. So
I was going to ask, what is the biggest poetry publication or syndicate, or is that it?
Probably poetry. The New Yorker, they publish poems, like 2 poems an issue. Been trying to get in there, haven't gotten any luck. American Poetry Review, which it's an old school newspaper sort of print journal. It's old, and that way it's presented that way. Of course, APR. I was a winner of the APR Honickman First Book Prize, so they sort of like helped sponsored the prize that I ended up winning for my book, and that was a journal I had been trying to get into for years, and I didn't until I actually won the prize, and then I just had a poem published, in the November-December issue of 2020. So I was really excited about that.
That's congrats! That's awesome.
A dream journal, as they say, and so I think poetry world is going through a reckoning, as much of the country is sort of going through a reckoning in various ways. Of course, we're sort of going through this racial reckoning and trying to really look at ourselves as individuals, as a country, as a society, and look at the white supremacy that's sort of built into the system, right? And I think poetry is sort of like that, in that there are sort of in certain institutions that are sort of being called out and have been called out for them to do better, and to make it more equitable, to make the industry more diverse. And
on the subject of gatekeepers, because that seems to be the classic model, right? You'd be institutionally backed, or there would be someone who could at least put up a wall in terms of the distribution of printed material, right? Because it ends up being almost logistics based at a certain point. We talk about printing something somewhere and then having it shipped to another place. You need partners in that endeavor.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, we're only at the time where the internet has created enough dispersion for people to, take power away from the gatekeepers, or at least give more power to the individuals. Because obviously the gatekeepers still have a lot of that power. Like you said, they still need to be called out, and there's still people that need to reevaluate the way works are shared or promoted, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously there's plenty of online journals and journals that do both, print and online. But I think obviously you have more power as an online based journal, sort of publish whatever you want, and you can sort of exclude, you could say this is just a journal for queer, people of color writers, and because those voices are traditionally suppressed in publishing, and I mean all over, right? And so I think there's greater, and that's obviously good. We want more of that. We want more voices coming up to the forefront and that have been underrepresented and suppressed in whatever ways. But even still, then there's still there's still this idea of gatekeeping.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if there are common tags that people use on poetry. I noticed I'm recently doing the work to get this podcast on the iTunes store, and they have very limited categories about what this is going to be called. Mm-hmm. Society and culture is a main common one, but then there's that for comedy, society and culture, there's politics, there's news, there's ones you would expect, but there's not unlimited categories. They do squeeze you into a certain tag or category.
Yeah.
And I was curious if that happens with poetry, either short form, long form. I don't know if they have a fiction, nonfiction designation. You mentioned ones based on the identity or, ethnic makeup of the author. And whether that's something that's actively changing, that needs to change. Is it something that's respected? Do you search poetry by categories or tags or?
Not really. I tend to search, based on names. If I recognize a certain name or come across a certain name, I'll, but of a poem that I like by a certain poet, then I'll just sort of go and look for that poet specifically. And
more classically networking based, you have a node or a network of information that you're adding nodes on.
Yeah.
Following the branches you're
right. Yeah. In. Following them on Instagram or whatever social medias they use.
This is the perfect time to transition to the TikTok element. What is the social media of poetry?
I don't know the TikTok. I don't know the TikTok element. I can't.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. I want to speculate with you then. This is maybe even more valuable because, I mean, no one our age is on TikTok, really, still. We're at that point. Although it's pretty clear that there's going to be continued attention there, or at the very least, there's going to be attention on the current platforms using TikTok elements in how we consume media. YouTube now has shorts. Instagram now has reels.
Right.
So whether we're talking about TikTok or TikTok is talking about us, I feel like that's a phenomenon that's hard to deny. But do you feel like, I mean, Instagram is our age bracket.
Right.
If you had to give us one like clear social network, has it always been that poetry was welcome on Instagram? Did it thrive on Instagram?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have the Insta poets, right? Or these Instagram poets who are sort of just publishing there, like they're not really sort of seeking out journals to sort of submit to, I don't think, or not that I know of. Again, my knowledge is limited to the poets that are like that, like Rupi Kapoor, I believe is her name, and
she released does she release things online and then releases like Homebody? She'll put it in a book.
I think
and
so.
Then
yeah.
Consolidate
then that stuff that you see that on her feed, it's stuff that's published. Yeah, the stuff that's published, it's stuff you see on her feed. Have seen it on her feed before, but she's hugely popular, and I don't know of any other like sort of traditional poet, whatever that means, that's that status or selling that many books or whatever.
Also, I'm sorry I keep asking you about like poetry like it's a single thing,
right?
Or like,
yeah, no,
I know that's comical too, because like anyone who's writing lyrics, it's poetry. I mean, a lot of prose and any writing, copywriting, could be advertising writing is poetry, really. So thank you for treating it like a simple package. Obviously it's bigger than that.
I mean, I was like, poetry is one of the oldest art forms, right? It was an oral art form originally, right? That's how it began, and that's how stories were told, through poetry. And I myself, as a poet who, is, I guess I would, some like dub me a page poet, right? Somebody who sort of likes to have their work read on the page, but also can read their work in front of an audience, not necessarily performing it, but there is an active element, act of performing when reading. But I think I am interested in narratives. I am interested in telling stories, my story, my family story. I grew up, reading a lot of fiction and a lot of stories, so I feel like that played into my poetry and how I sort of use it to sort of tell certain stories, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, it's the most powerful thing we have as humans.
Yeah.
The art of storytelling and, basically creating avenues for new ideas in ways of feeling to get in our minds and our hearts, right? Do you personally like using your Instagram for poetry? Is that because you mentioned the moniker page poet, right?
Right.
What is that exactly? Is that, do people, you said Insta poet, page poet? Is there another category that?
Well, there's like, page versus stage is what was something that was talked about a couple years ago, maybe not so much now, because there's, those lines are all blurred now, I think, or just being done away with, I think, which is good. It's just poetry, right? And but I think, there are people who come through the poetry scene from like this performative, like the slam poetry scene, for example, right? And people who are reciting their verses from memory and including the sort of theatrical element to it. Whereas I'm, I guess, somewhat of a page poet, and who, not to say that the people who are performance, whatever poet, don't care about like their work on the page, how it reads on the page. I care about that, and I'm curious, to make sure that's important, not just me, the audibleness of the poems, the oralness of the poems, but like how it reads, to
that's
a reader.
huge.
So
yeah.
So I think that's how I would dub myself, I guess. I don't know if I had to dub myself.
Yeah, not asking you, to stick a final thing. You're even going to do a reading for us here, so we're still going to summon the stage soon. But I know that's definitely different when, like, I think currently when I'm thinking about writing something and then being performative with it, it's through the lens of maybe stand-up comedy, just because that's probably the most analogous to the art of podcasting, and maybe my American perspective and how we are now through our social media accounts, like performing commentary, like we're acting like the jester in some ways all the time. But it's different when you have to like scream or swear in between half of your jokes or something to pump it up because the material isn't good enough as is. And when it can just lay on the page and actually call out to someone, that's when you know you have something good, right? When it's been properly edited, I assume it's not too full and fluffed up.
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, as a reader, I believe there is a certain, you know, magic that happens when you're reading not just poetry, but anything like fiction, or example, some sort of like art, right? And there's a connection that happens between author and reader that takes place in the mind that you can't really, you know, talk about clearly as I'm fumbling with words here. But I do think, and I think that's important, and that's something I really value when it comes to writing and when it comes to the reader relationship. That's something that's key for me.
Is it because you're having the person read your thoughts in their own voice, like their own mind's voice?
Yeah, is
making them more open than just hearing the pure timbre and difference of someone else's vocal cords coming at you?
Yeah, I think so. I think because everyone's going to read, you know, poems differently. You know, if I were to have you read one of my poems, you'd read it in a different way than obviously I am. But that's just because of the way you read, right? And the way you read aloud, if you were to read aloud. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I think that's there's something that magical that happens there. And,
oh yeah, definitely.
And I think it's an important relationship, and it's something that I don't take for granted. You know.
On this, I mentioned TikTok. I just had gone on recently because I was interested in sharing elements of the podcast in a different way. YouTube is great for long form videos, but I also make these other moments or encourage these other visuals in the podcast that I would like to share in a way that's just not buried within an hour of other stuff. For instance, like the opening musical sequence or any sort of graphics like this, the stuff that's on the screen here. I thought it'd be fun, even for the people, you know, who come on the show, to be able to look back and get quick little clips or like greatest hits, almost using like a TikTok channel, like a clip channel.
Right. I noticed you were clipping the YouTube. I mean, on the podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just trying to be. This is also kind of going in concert with my comfort in being more open about the work that I'm making and not just having everything packaged in its uncut, authentic form. Like, you want to see something that happened in the podcast, you know, check it out. There's all, 80 minutes of it here. Like, I understand that the world doesn't work that way. It's not accessible, right? And it can end up being more selfish in a way for me to be too much of a purist, I think, with how it's delivered.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to TikTok, back to poetry. One of the things I noticed on TikTok is all the videos have closed captioning, basically. So many of the videos, especially the big videos, they probably show me the biggest, most popular videos at first.
Right.
They're designed so you could watch the video with your audio off. And a lot of times if they're delivering a message, they have like closed captioning that happens. I mean, it's like, stylized graphics and texts that you can easily use as an overlay on top of the video.
That's cool.
But it's really powerful for people that obviously are hearing impaired, and my father is, and I know a lot of people are, so they can still get the full meaning of the video. Actually, my girlfriend Shavana, we watch everything with English closed captions because English is not her first language, and it's just obviously, again, breaking down walls and making sure that it's at the highest level enjoyment for everyone. But I was just thinking about how great that was about TikTok, and I never would have thought about that before. How they're thinking about the user experience from multiple dimensions, not just assuming everyone's watching on a big, gorgeous television with incredible speakers, whatever. It's meant so you can hear it in a crowded situation. You can't make it out. You can read it,
right?
Or you're not even listening, right? Or maybe it's just keeping you on. Maybe I don't know if there's studies that people will keep consuming more if they're reading, almost like they're getting something done,
right? Versus
just passively consuming a video. I don't know why this is such a big thing.
Yeah.
Maybe the international element of TikTok. I mean, I'm mentioning my own relation to the international benefit of this. It's an international company, right? It's a Chinese company.
Right.
But do you know anything about the poetry on TikTok? Like, because I know there's like FinTok now, financial TikTok. There's got to be poet talk somewhere, right?
There probably is. I know there are some poets, that I see in my Instagram feed who have like TikTok channels. and have posted not poetry stuff. They just posted like silly videos of themselves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I think, for example, my friend Tarfia Faizullah, poet, incredible poet, amazing person. She posted something that I saw via IG from her TikTok channel where she was just like mouthing the lyrics of that Bruno Mars Anderson .Paak song jam that's out right now.
Leave the door open.
Yeah, she was doing that, and had Kevin like wearing a little robe, and they had a teddy bear. I don't know, it was just a funny clip. And there's another Brittany Black Rose Capri, she has her own TikTok channel, and it's just, and I see it again via IG, and it's just bits, like she's just doing bits, like, and I love it, and it's not even poetry related, but I dig it.
Well, I know a lot of times these mediums come out and people start expressing themselves in a new way. Like the clearest, easiest answer for people our age, like on Instagram, it was food at first. Food was the thing that got people comfortable, then sharing their vacation photos, then sharing their baby photos. Like there are certain doors that help us walk through so that the medium can, again, it's a way to like lower the bar of entry or make it so that we can appreciate the medium on a new set of terms. Right. And it's not just you have to dance to a song or a soundtrack. Like it can be a skit, or maybe it is a song, but then there's a skit to the song, right? You're not just singing, or you're doing goofy things too. Right. Again, getting to this lifestyle where we're all kind of comedians and we all have that performative voice now.
Yeah. You know, going back to the TikTok and the subtitles, it got me thinking. So I work at a library, and I have a student worker, and I guess like your father, her grandmother is hearing impaired, and one time she posed this question to me, and I'll ask you, do you think that DVDs and I guess Blu-rays without captioning are ableist?
DVDs without, it's funny you say this, because I've noticed a lot of the old DVDs, like especially 15 years ago, for the closed captioning, it says for the hearing impaired. And now, like modern DVDs, I feel like it went away with that. Like they've realized, like, this can be for people that speak English as a second language. This can be for different categories. But on some of the older DVDs, it specifically says, like, this is like the section for people who are hearing impaired. Like it's almost marketing it in the terminology of the DVD. Yeah. I don't think so necessarily, because I think the problem would be if it was a requirement. And I know this has been true in different ways for different stages of the DVD, but anytime you have a requirement for something to be a DVD, you're kind of putting up a wall for this art to exist. And I know a lot of young people have consumed videos without much income, maybe illegally downloading, and a lot of times they're just downloading the video file. And if that can plant the seed in them that the art was meant for, that's a wonderful thing. Yeah. Even if the overall accessibility level isn't as high as possible. DVDs actually, they can actually take a lot of work to produce and create the content for. And I know even like in terms of specs, there's limitations on how much can go in there. Like it was dual layer DVDs that hold like 9 gigs. Single ones are like 4.7 gigs. And based on the length of the movie, maybe it needs 2 discs, or it doesn't even all fit on there. Right. So I'm thinking kind of from like a hardcore production perspective about it. And even like my podcast, I knowing going in, I started recording this in 2019. I'm going to record this podcast knowing that it's not in existence now, but in 5 years, 10 years, it's going to be automatically closed captioned. I'll have automatic transcripts for it. I can do like a Control F search to see all the times I brought up Trump. Right. And then instantly look at all the timestamps for all the time Trump came up, or, we brought up Fox News, or these elements maybe we're being critical of. Basically, I'm saying all this to point out the fact that even if the technology hasn't been pursued or accomplished in the present, it doesn't mean that all hope is lost for the future. Because and now YouTube does like auto-generate captions.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And you have that ability even though it wasn't before. So in general, I want people's ideas to get expressed. And I just want it to happen so bad. I'm so afraid of like making that hard. Like if there's a law where if you had to release a DVD, it had to have closed captioning, it had to have chapter markers, it had to have any deleted scenes that were used for promotional materials. Like I don't know what the law would be, right? Right. But if that were true, it could actually make it harder for people to create the work. I think that's so imperative and probably the point in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Long answer.
No, yeah, I appreciate that. I didn't really know how to answer that myself. And
get it out and let the future take care of it. If it's good, I mean, it will be transcribed by someone, and maybe it will be captioned.
Yeah.
We talked about YouTube earlier. A lot of times you watch stuff on YouTube, the movie's in English, but then there's like Korean captioning on the bottom, but then like maybe there's even some other captioning next to that. Like,
yeah.
The whole world is like this remix blender, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's great when you can just get something in on the game.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so we're talking about the TikTok element. I don't know how common, I guess, the closed captioning is. It just seems to be an important part about it that I never had really thought about before. Another thing I thought it might be good for in relation to poetry was because they can actually have series on TikTok, which I didn't realize. Like, you can link your videos, and it's clear like how they belong together.
Oh.
So let's say you catch a stanza from a poem in one video. You can see it's like highlighted almost like in yellow. Oh, this is from the Garth series, and then you can click on the Garth series, and maybe the Garth that section, it's just a poem, and TikTok is like chopping up all the different sections maybe of the poem, and it just really increases the reach of each individual section.
Yeah.
Do you like, because I'm sure you feel that there's like significance and important elements of the parts of your work probably independent from the whole, right? Sometimes you would want maybe the middle section to ring true with certain people, the last section to ring true with others.
Yeah, for sure. I think, for me, when I write, what's important to me is, one of the things that's important to me is line breaks, and the way I end a certain line or break a line at a certain part of the phrase or sentence or whatever, and the way it bleeds into the next line, and allowing for, if possible, and that doesn't always happen, of course, in all my work, but in some of my work, I'm curious about the way individual lines read and can read and have multiple meanings. Like if it were just read on its own, and if you continue to read it going into the next line, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like just sort of playing with that break, with that end line, and seeing how, with different meanings, with different associations can come from that. So that's something that's important to me, and I think about a lot. And when it comes to crafting the work on the page.
Do you find yourself using like just literal space on the page? Is it a punctuation strategy?
No, it's more just a break. It's like, da 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 da, and the line here, and then go to the next line. And a lot of it is also just sort of natural. How I write it when I free flow, because I tend to write by hand when I'm coming up with drafts, but and so sometimes I'll break it at a certain point, maybe because I get to the end of the page and I just need to break it and continue on to the next line. But when I'm actually editing it, when like a Word document, for example, then I'll start playing and really thinking about intentionality of form, right? And thinking about the way it's presented on the page, whether or not it's going to be in a traditional form like the sonnet or villanelle or whatever, or if it's just going to be like a free verse, my own type of form that I create for the poem. So yeah, I'm constantly thinking about that stuff when I'm revising, when I'm writing, but not necessarily when I'm actually, first composing a poem, when I'm drafting a poem. It's more important to just get whatever that urge that brought me to the page initially. It's important to just sort of get that feeling, get those words, thoughts out of there as much as I can, and then, give it a day or two, then go back and revisit, and then try to craft something of it, if anything.
Yeah, so get in and, I don't want to say whittle it down, but like carve it more to the shape that you're trying to get it to.
Yeah, for sure.
I have the impression, of course, because I brought up TikTok being short form media, that poetry like is inherently shorter than full length.
So that's a homer, man.
Stories. I know. No, and again, I want to be challenged on this. I want to see how much of that is still true, how much of that is just my childish notion of like the intellectual level I've risen to in prose or poetry, if that's just that's a muscle that hasn't been developed enough within me or other people nowadays. But do you like, is that still, do you feel like that's a fair assessment? Is it that there are just different movements in poetry, and some people, of course, take as much time and page length as they require?
Yeah, I think it depends on the poet. And there's a poet, Nathaniel Mackey, is like an elder statesman in the poetry world, and he's been writing sort of one long poem over, I don't know how many books he has out now, but like it's just the Song of the Andumbulu. And he recently put out like a trilogy set of poetry books, like in it, as a new latest addition to this epic poem. Like it's called the serial poem, really. And it's a poem that sort of like has no ending. It's sort of like this continued project that he has. And I'm not a writer of that type. I've studied a little bit of it when I was in college, the serial poem as an idea, as a sort of, long running poem that spans, his lifetime, really. And, I struggled to get a good grasp of that, at least in my own work. I appreciated it, and I appreciate what Nate Mackey's doing. I think he's a genius, and but like it's crazy to think that, like, he would argue, I would say that's a counter for that. Like, I don't think it's sort of necessarily a short form. I think maybe because certain poems, yeah, for sure there are short poems. I've written plenty of short poems, and it can sort of feed into that element. But I do think there's the more you spend time with poetry, the more you get out of it. Even if that poem is short, you can reread it multiple times and come up with different meanings if it's a good poem. And a longer poem, that just challenges you even more, right? It just sort of, it's like this epic poem, but presented, across whatever 10 pages or something. And I haven't written like a 10-page poem myself, but it may be because I'm like just sort of fearful of it. It's like, I don't know if I have the stamina, the energy, the even like, I don't know, feel like not worthless, but do I have enough to offer a poem like that? I'm not sure if I'm there yet.
Yeah, you're mentioning as a reflection of like the writer, but I wasn't sure if it was a reflection of the reader, like, because poems are so crafted and can be so dense. Like if it was more like a song that was just a longer song, so it was difficult to take in. Maybe songs are known to be like emotional and elicit feelings, as is poetry, obviously together often. But if it was that, like, it was hard for the reader to take in because it was so difficult. You mentioned though that like someone was writing poems basically throughout his whole life. I mean, the show is called The Neverending Becoming, and in a way, like this whole podcast, I'm like chopping up into calling it different episodes, calling it different seasons maybe, but right. Like what is the difference, right? Like, this is like a journal entry almost in humanity, and like at the end of a life, and if you can package it together and call it a cohesive thing, because it is, in a sense, from a perspective coming from maybe my lens, or like, yeah, maybe if you look at it, this being like an American piece of media or whatever, grouping you're going to put on it, whatever 21st century, type of art form. So it is interesting to think about the parts and when do they eventually become the whole, right? And even like what the difference is between the two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to do the reading soon. Can we?
Yeah, for sure.
Possibly make that happen?
Yeah, of course.
And I believe you brought a copy of your book. You could flash to the camera too. That'd be excellent. Make good use of the visual opportunities we have on the podcast. For sure.
Here's my book. It's called Throwing the Crown. It's got cover art by let me cover my face with it. By Krista Franklin, who's an amazing Chicago-based artist, poet, writer, phenomenal person. We sort of collaborated a little bit for the cover. I gave her some like old photos, and she ended up putting it together. If you want to take a look,
I'd love to. Yeah.
So that's been out in September. It'll be 3 years that the book's been out, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. How does that feel now that like you have established yourself and like are still building? Like, do you feel a sense of comfort having work released, or is it that you feel like more pressure because you need to keep the snowball rolling, you need to get it bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like 3 years is still young-ish, and in the
in poetry terms, especially.
In the poetry
right?
terms, and I'm still getting some traction out of this book. Like I've been very fortunate, and throughout my life, throughout my poetry career, to have had successes in various forms and whatever, not talking about like prize winning, but like in terms of being able to share my work, I guess is really a big success. And being asked to read and present and talk poetry to high school students or college students or whatever, and because of this book, that's a lot of that's the past couple of years have been. 2019 in particular was a great year for me and for my poetry career because of the various readings I was doing and the various engagements I had with within the community. And so yeah, I don't know. I'm not really feeling like pressure to write another book, although I'm thinking about it, but my thing is like I'm just trying to write the next poem, the next few poems, and trying to I don't know, just trying to write, which has been a struggle lately for sure.
Hard to have the same inspiration when you don't have the same touch points, right?
Yeah.
And obviously we're coming into this interesting time, I feel like, where there was so much group narrative for a while. I think a lot of people are thinking about getting rid of this person like Trump and some of the like mistakes we've made politically. Then like Corona, almost like a communal thing to focus on, like a communal effort to overcome.
Yeah.
And now we're entering this area where we're doing meaning making again, and we're trying to structure in some way that still is precarious, because obviously we are keenly aware now that things don't last forever necessarily, and that it takes constant building to keep things moving, keep your life naturally has a certain momentum, but obviously there's a certain fervor that comes along with making sure you're going in the right direction at the right speed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, for myself personally, last year was hard for my family. Like we experienced a lot of losses, not because of COVID, but also, partially because of COVID too. Lost an uncle via COVID or to COVID. But I had some aunts, 3 of my aunts died within like a 6-month span.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
That was rough. And especially for my mom, these are her older sisters, and my mom was one of 9 children. And, that was and that it had been a while since we'd experienced death in the family. And for those to come, back to back was really hard, along with some other deaths, that I won't want to talk about right now, but it's just been a hard year. And I think only recently I've started to try to write about those deaths, those losses, and try to make sense of it. Try to make sense of watching a live stream of a funeral service, in Texas, while we're here, and that was like, bizarre. So like I think the poems that I've been writing, that I've written about those losses, have been about that experience. But I didn't bring those with me.
No, that's fine.
But
that's fine.
But it feels good to sort of like at least initially start to figure out my way there and how to make sense of this and bring meaning to what what these people meant to me and my family. And so I'm feeling hopeful about writing more in the future, but it's been slow.
Oh, sure. When big moments happen, when you're right next to the sun, even though you feel the heat, you see the light, doesn't mean you're able to look at it, you're able to talk about it. It takes a lot to reflect upon and to come to terms with like what is even happening in any given day, let alone some of the tragic days or some of the more difficult days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sorry it was such an unfortunate time. Did you not get to do any family, like were you able to get together at all? You said you had a broadcast of a funeral?
Right, yeah, because my aunts were They were living in Texas, and
that's the worst. You can't be with anyone.
Yeah.
You can't actually.
Yeah.
Even outdoors for a second or anything.
Nope. We did not make the trip because it was just too dangerous.
That's distance. Going to Texas, that's far.
Yeah,
You'd have to stop somewhere probably.
It is, and we opted not to do that. I mean, I talked with my mom about it, and we, if she wanted to go, I was willing to take that risk with her and visit our family there. But of course, this happened in July of last year, then September. So it was like, and Texas was going through its own
at that time.
Yeah, July 2020. It was like the cases are rising, and it's like, I was like, Ma, I know you want to go, but it's like I was like, advising her not to, even though it like broke my heart, and it broke her heart too. It's like, we're still trying to come to grips with it and make sense of it, of all the losses we've experienced, and not being able to be there. That's been the difficult thing is, my family's, we're pretty close, and we're a loving, hugging, touching bunch. Yeah. And so if we were to go and not be able to do that, even, that's like, well, how do we mourn? How do we mourn? I guess that's the thing. It's like, we weren't able to properly mourn in some ways and grieve, like with our family as most people do. That
makes a lot of sense. It could possibly be better to not even entertain the idea of getting together or being together, because it's not the same. You know, how weird did it feel to be around loved ones outside, when you're not able to touch them and see them?
Yeah.
To be, imprinting any of those memories on your hard drive that are kind of unnatural in a way, it can be difficult on top of anything difficult that's already going on.
Yeah.
Do you have something specific you'd like to read? Do you want to do a thematic thing?
Yeah. I was thinking of, I have a couple poems in here, so a couple basketball poems I could read.
Nice. Cool. Yeah.
We're ballers.
I'd love to talk about basketball a little bit more too. You recently met Scottie Pippen.
I did meet Scottie Pippen.
You got the chance to meet a Chicago legend. Any Chicago shout outs I can give on this podcast, I am all too into.
Yeah, I love Scottie. He's my favorite player.
Most underrated player of all time, would you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's one of the greatest small forwards of all time. I mean, I guess him and Larry, it feels like at this point, although of course LeBron and Kevin Durant are building their own cases, but
are they small forwards?
I guess I think technically, yeah, they came, or at least LeBron came into the league as a small forward.
Really?
And KD, I think, was still. I think he came into the league too as a small forward. So, but it's positionless basketball now, right? Yeah. So it's like everyone is everything, or can be everything, any position depending on who you're playing. And but yeah, so
I'd love to hear a basketball.
Yeah, so I got a basketball poem. I'm gonna try to adjust this, if that's all right.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, all right. So this is I have two basketball poems in here that I'll share with you. This is called Holding Court. Today I became king of the court without a diamond encrusted crown thrust upon my sweaty head. Instead, my markings of royalty were the t-shirt draping my body like a robe soaked in champagne, and the pain in my right knee, a sign of a battle endured, my will tested and bested by none, as the ball flew off my hands as swift as an arrow toward the heart of a target, my fingers ringless yet feeling like gold.
I love it. I love it. So many feels, man. So many feels.
Wrote that after a hot shooting night, playing King of the Court in the gym. I used to go to Export Fitness and play pickup basketball.
Oh yeah, same.
Loop. And that canceled that during the pandemic. But but yeah, I had played King of the Court there with some guys, and I won it. And I never really played King of the Court. You know what King of the Court is?
I thought you were saying where you like stay on when you win a game, like in pickup games, and you get to keep playing.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Is this an individual version of that, or is it still team-based?
There was 3 of us, and it was sort of one-on-one. You make it
one-on-one.
You stay on.
Yeah.
And then, then the other guy trumps a guard, and whoever gets to whatever 5, 11 points, whatever we're playing to, wins the game. And, you get your own rebound and you could stay on or whatever. But yeah, so I had a hot shooting game and I wrote that poem.
That's great. So many, you like triggered so many like meditative moments too. The feelings you get when you're playing basketball.
Yeah.
I also, of course, had surgery in my right knee, so you're also specifically getting at the basketball there.
Sorry, did you tear anything or?
Yeah, a couple of things. I tore my the patella, I believe is what it was. So they had and there was a bone contusion on my femur, my patella, and then there was blood in my joint. It was like a few things.
Oh crap!
It was a rough one.
Was it a basketball related?
It was not.
Okay.
No, it was a different thing. I'll tell that story another time.
Yeah.
Knees are mostly good for basketball, so.
Yeah, mostly good. My knees are mostly fine for now. Here's another poem called Shoot Around. I run onto the lot of the local school's outdoor basketball court and start shooting around shirtless, burning my shoulders under a sizzling July sunset. Alone, I focus on form and follow through, bending knees, pointing my right elbow towards the basket, my arm a goose's neck upon release. The ball echoes off walls with each bounce, the chain net rattles crisply with each swish. Above, I see birds circle over trees on a cliff overlooking the court like skybox seating. Midway through shooting, a white cop rushes onto school grounds. I think game over, because I'm a brown body on a black top in a town where school celebrates Wigger Day with white kids donning do-rags and baggy pants, their heads drenched in fake dreads and cultural appropriation. Instead, the cop turns a corner and walks down an aisle surrounding the school. I fling a few more shots, which clank off the rim as sweat slides down my face and chest as he heads towards trees and bushes to conceal his movement. I glance up and witness a hawk swooping deep into green leaves for a prey I cannot see.
Basketball has an incredible ability to tap into such like powerful emotions, at least because your body, like you're never using your body like that in anything. Especially the older I get, the more I forget that you don't like ever get to move and use your body and you in the ways that you do when you play basketball.
Yeah.
I also feel like it got 10 times harder to speak after hearing you read such like beautiful sentiments and like thoughtfully crafted turns of phrases.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
No, but thank you for sharing. Those were wonderful. But also, you, I don't know, just to talk more about that poem.
Yeah, of course.
Just the fact that when you play basketball in a way, I love again the fact that a bird is in that too. Like I've used bird stuff in a lot of the imagery I've produced around here because it's such a bird sanctuary. You have a bird on your cover. I noticed that.
Yeah.
But the feeling of like freedom, and the feeling of like expansiveness and joy you can have while playing basketball. Then the piece with the police officer, right?
Yeah.
That you mentioned, and how it also like basketball can be like an intimidating game, and like it can be very threatening feeling, and also more to the point of the poem, it can maybe possibly to the point of the poem, it can feel so difficult to have a free space in a wonderful place that you feel comfortable in exerting to that level,
right.
Being open, throwing your body around.
Yeah.
Because it does ask for so much, mentally and physically, outside of the locations that basketball courts can be in, a school or some of these other highly protected or highly managed areas.
Yeah.
Right. That can feel like some of the least free places of all, especially as a young person, if you associate school or any of those places with rules or authority figures or anything.
Yeah. Just a little bit of background. I wrote that poem while I was doing this residency at the Anderson Center for the Arts in Red Wing, Minnesota. It's a beautiful place, especially, that part of the country, which I hadn't seen before. This is in 2011 I did this. And actually I began putting together the poems I had at the time into manuscript form. And that's sort of like, that's where this book sort of began, was at the Anderson Center. And anyways, they were down the street. Down the street was this like elementary school that had like a blacktop court, and I'd shoot around there. Sometimes I usually go by myself, but I would go with some of the other residents there. There was this excellent pianist there, Michael Salka, and his wife Angelica Escobar, and we played some games together. And I thought like I thought like I was gonna kick his ass and just like to score on him like nothing. He's taller than me and he's a little husky, but not like overly and whatever. But he definitely used his body against me. Like I'm a slim dude, and
I thought you were gonna tell me those piano fingers had pulled off some tricks.
Well, he did. He had a nice touch for sure, and then he would just post me up and then just sort of like elegantly laid the ball in or floated in or whatever, and I think he was even playing in like chocolate, like sandals, man. And I was like, I'm in my shoes. I'm like game for this. But anyways, so we did this. We would go and shoot there, some of us. And one time I was there, and it was the only time. And the reason I think like this cop came on randomly was because I had run across the, just like to work on my drills, like running and dribbling, just like practice. Whereas normally I would just walk and carry the ball, but I was like running and dribbling, and I'm assuming like the security camera at the school caught it, and they were like, go see about this. And then the guy get there, and it's just me. And I thought he was going to come over and say something, but he doesn't. But like I said, he just sort of, like the poem says, it just skirts around the building, just sort of disappears from whatever. I'm like, well, this doesn't make me feel that
so intimidating, my lord.
And then later on, after the residency, I learned about this high school in Red Wing, Minnesota. I forget the name, but it doesn't matter. But like they had this part of their homecoming week was like Wigger Day or whatever, or it was unofficially called that. And,
oh God.
And that explained a lot to me in terms of like the politics, the racial politics there, and I thought that would inform the poem a little bit more and give it some more complexity. So
it's awful how similar things still feel to like the turn of the millennium, like around when we were 10, 12 years old, whatever, around the year 2000.
Yeah.
And how
when you were 10, 12.
Yeah, you're a little bit older than me, right? So
I'm 39.
Okay. Well, you're still in the same wheelhouse. You were old enough. I'm trying to me 12 years old to like 20. That's an age you start remembering, forming memories, whatever. Yeah. But how little has changed in terms of Black people basically being the absolute leaders of all consumable culture. Mm-hmm. And, how that's still the truth. Like if you look at hip hop music sales in just the leading musical trends. We've been talking about social media platforms and all the different creators and influencers that have now spawned, and again a lot of it ends up being a lot of people culture appropriating Black culture on these social media platforms. Like a lot of them have been used like that way.
Yeah,
but it's just and then you mentioned the word wigger. I haven't heard that like word in a long time, and I feel like almost like it's been lost from public consciousness. I feel like it was used more 20 years ago
during Eminem's like peak.
Yeah, is that what it is? I'm trying to think what is all this. I feel like
that's what it was.
Exactly.
I mean, whenever time I hear that word, or anytime, not that I hear it often, thankfully, it's just I think of Eminem because that's like what he was dubbed, or he used that in one of his verses, right? And but yeah, that was like around. So yeah, I guess it is around 2000, ish.
Yeah,
that was like that was like term being used.
Yeah,
and then this poem was about this class was in 2011, so 10 years after the Eminem blew up, then that was still being used somehow. And
arguably leaving that era of Eminem's influence, or I guess maybe possibly you could view it us entering a stage in our language when we're being more sensitive to these terms, because it feels incredibly problematic.
Yeah.
Obviously, because it feels in a way like you're saying the other word,
right?
And the fact that obviously there's still this phenomenon of maybe Black people being used for their culture, but maybe we've lost the way to call it out. Not to say that people should start using like the word wigger again,
right?
But it's now just upon reflection, it's odd to me that has also fallen out of the language of the culture, but seemingly for good reasons, like out of respect and not to simplify something down and to try to be more thoughtful, because I have heard like increased conversations around cultural appropriation that we didn't hear back then, which obviously is possibly more positive because maybe more nuance is getting in, or maybe with podcasting there are more longer form conversations that are happening and it's not just reduced to a soundbite, right, or to a single tag on someone's chosen identity.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. I'm glad that, that term's not around anymore. And, but of course there's, there are different coded words now that we use or that people use to describe certain groups of people,
Right.
So it's, language is just constantly morphing and changing, and it's obviously, it's important to be conscious of the way you use language and to say what you mean, really, and instead of like just trying to codify it and do these signals to certain people or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, this is, the information age. Like, I feel like everyone's becoming so much more intelligent with their signaling as a phenomenon, and obviously understanding that there are so many different ways to express and communicate now. You have to be thoughtful about like word choice and obviously all sorts of other elements of presentation.
Yeah.
Even we've talked so much about the packaging of ideas, and maybe converting knowledge in the poetry realm, being one of the oldest art forms, to something that's maybe the newest art form of TikTok,
right,
if you want to call it that.
And
how, like, what gets lost when you stretch from one to the other, or maybe something you can gain or regain as you move from one mode of communication to the next.
Yeah, for sure. I think also too, like with poetry, it's constantly evolving too. And beyond like just obviously, me, my boring ass with reading and no, I'm just saying, but like there are a lot of more innovative poets out there who are doing great things, amazing things. Like there's this poet Keith Wilson who's doing these amazing like graphic poetry, and Naoko Fujimoto, who was a friend and an editor at Rhino, which is the journal I helped edit for a while, and she's doing a lot of great stuff with graphic poetry and just presenting poetry, but in this like visual art sort of way, and sort of engaging the senses in that. I think it's really, really cool.
I have to pay some respects to your chosen medium here quickly though, and say that the classic arts are classic for a reason. And no, really, I mean, people will continue to read, and the phenomenon we mentioned about hearing an idea or reading an idea in your own voice, that's going to take a while for the algorithms to be able to replicate your vocal pattern, and for there to maybe be audiobook resources that will read a book in your own voice to you, or something that could maybe get closer to matching the internal dialogue, which again, we're not even there. I mean, you can think and read so much faster, and you can comprehend vocal messages. I mean, basically, like I think it's incredibly powerful. Audio, I mean, Clubhouse just blew up this last year, and that's basically just people talking on the phone almost. I mean, that's like it's a podcast without the video, but with the spontaneity of dialing people in or connecting people easily. Do you know anything about Clubhouse? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm bringing this up like it's common knowledge.
No.
It was basically just a podcasting type platform without the video, but with connective conduciveness. Like two people, me and you, will host a room. We're having a poetry podcast in this room, and then anyone can listen. They can jump on the app. They can be represented listening to the conversation in the app, in the user interface. Mm-hmm. And then if one of our friends from Grosse Park comes in, we can invite him up. If we want to talk about something specific, almost like pull them on stage. It's really just like unmuting their microphone,
right,
so they can take part.
That's cool.
But there's something very special about, and you mentioned reading too. Obviously people are going to read, but being the person to actually read, you doing a poetry reading, there's something that's so important about just audio.
Yeah.
Audio only. I'm actually just getting to the stage where I'm going to start releasing this podcast in audio only form.
Nice.
And it's actually ridiculous I haven't even done that yet, because I prefer to listen to podcasts with just audio only.
Right.
Like just having someone's voice in your head.
Right.
So I'm very bullish on the future of read poetry and audio and of course reading. I mean, those things are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, as you're talking, I was thinking about the video element that we're doing with this podcast, and I've been playing to this camera and totally forgot about this camera in the middle that's catching us both. So hey there.
Well, that's the thing. There's so many ways and methods of capture now that like you can forget about one. Like here we can maybe get totally immersed in the audio element. Obviously we're blasting the audio into our ears. I feel like that's much more
great audio elements, by the way.
But no, it's getting to the point where, and I mentioned the theoretical transcript, like we could be reading this one day. Like when in 50 years, if you go back and be like, what did I talk about on that first podcast with James, whatever, and you can go and read it. You can read back, well, maybe you'll be reading this and not even watching in the future, even though like maybe your mind now is on the video. Right. Maybe in the future it'll be back to reading. You know? There's only so many good ideas in life. Really, there's only so many senses you have, you know, your eyes, your ears. So if you can find a way to most effectively tap into one of those, which I think you have done with your work, I think you're onto something for the long term.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, feeling very positive about that. I want to talk a little bit more about basketball because that is how we know each other.
Yeah.
Love to pay more respect to the Grosse Park gang and everything. I'm going to do a quick time check.
All right.
I'm going to go look at where we're at. One of the things I forgot, I need to start doing this, is I wanted to have you record something at the beginning where you like signal us like, it's been 60 minutes. So next time you come on the podcast, I'm going to have you be a part of the queuing process or like help keep us on task in your own voice.
For sure.
It's something fun too about hearing yourself. But let me check the time. While I'm doing that, remind me exactly how you found out about the basketball or how we even know each other. I can't remember if you just were going to the park, if you know anyone from the group that we play with. I can't even recall this at this point, which is, of course, a bit of magic in and of itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter, but...
Yeah, no, I just came on. I used to live around the corner from Grosse Park, and I would shoot Saturday mornings there. And yeah, you guys showed up. I feel like definitely, I don't know if you were there initially at this first game, but I think definitely Micah, Arpit, some other folks, obviously some of the other regulars, but they invited me. You guys, we played. I joined your game because you needed an extra body and had fun. And then you're all like, yeah, it's Facebook group. You're on Facebook, da-da-da. I was like, yeah, sure. And been part of the group ever since. And yeah, I've been playing with you guys, even though I've moved from that apartment to Albany Park. And now my partner and I moved just to Ravenswood, but I'm still coming back because it's a fun group, and you guys are, you know, I have another group, another Saturday, because sometimes I would go play at a Saturday afternoon game after playing with you all in an indoor court, and
that's crazy to me that you were double dipping basketball.
I don't know what I was doing. I'm gonna pay for it later. But,
no, you were taking full advantage. I mean, these young days of ours.
Was just, I was feeling it. I love the game so much that I was willing to play it, and back to back. And then, but yeah, there was one of my friends there, Dave Welch, for that game. He's just like, whenever nobody new comes on, I was like, don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick. And you guys aren't dickish. You guys aren't really assholes.
Wait, he tells people don't be a dick?
Yeah,
when new people?
Yeah, like if
that's helpful because some people, they'll put their whole lives on the line for a game. You know, they're trying to work out all their frustrations. You mentioned export. I had to stop going to export for basketball because it felt too emotionally expensive. People screaming and like almost doing like court therapy. You know, like they were working all out on the court.
Yep.
Which I get. I've been playing basketball long enough to not take that personally.
Right.
But now I'm getting to the point where I get to play, especially full court basketball, so rarely that I don't want like my experience being soiled by someone who spends like 3 hours there every day, and they'll like, you know, flip out or like make a big deal because they're very comfortable there. And me, like, I want to have good associations and like warm feelings with the people I play with. Like, because it's, I mean, talk about the groups and whatnot. It is kind of sacred to be able to get together, you know, with other people and to be able to, you know, whip your body around in this way. Like, it's hard. Again, as we're getting older, even it's harder and harder, like throughout your 30s. I mean, people just start dropping like flies. Like, your peers just won't participate anymore.
Yeah. I mean, also, a lot of people are getting, you know, starting families, or, you know, there's a couple Grosse Park people who have, you know, kids and are married. And even in the Monday night game I would play, there was a lot of dads in that game, and they would just miss for various things, which, you know, obviously go do your parental duty, but regretted just, you know, we were hoping for at least 8, only like 6 show up, so we just got to play 3-on-3 half court or sometimes full court, but yeah, I think it is important, and like the I'm not one to take out my frustrations or whatever on the court. It's not. I mean, it can be therapeutic. I do believe that there's. For me, I do definitely, it resets me a little bit, but it's not something where like I'm pissed. My partner angered me, so I got to take it out on James on the court tonight or today, and it's like it ain't that serious for me. It's Saturday morning pickup ball.
You're very cool, level-headed. Like I rarely see you.
Yeah,
express any undue frustration at all. It can be confusing because some people, like the pattern of how there's just more violent crimes in the summer because people are like warm and like frustrated, like undeniably. It's kind of like that with basketball where you get so fucking worked up trying to jump for a rebound that then any sort of emotional infraction that could occur, it maybe gets more than it deserves in terms of someone's angst or anger.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's unfortunate because maybe it's someone who even isn't used to exercising that much and isn't used to just the intensity that comes along with adrenaline and anything else that's pumping out through your body that you're not used to sitting in front of a computer for 14 hours a day or whatever people do.
Yeah. Nah, I hear you. But
I'm happy that if everyone that matches the note, don't be a dick mentality, though, that tends to happen.
Yeah. No one's a dick at the games. And that's great. And I mean, you guys are all like, and you all have, a previous relationship too with each other, I think, or many of you do, it seems. And
now I'm not even so sure. We have so many people there. I don't like it's changing. Actively.
Yeah. I mean, there was like the North Park. Wait, would you go to not North Park?
A high school group. We went to North Side.
Excuse me. Thank you.
That was definitely a mainstay.
Yeah.
But now it's grown. What do you think about the fact that now there's like more people than there was before? That now like more people are coming.
I think it's cool.
It's amazing
because there's also like I haven't seen some other faces that I used to see back in when I first started joining the game, and so I think it's cool like that people have invited more folks in, and they're generally okay people. So
absolutely,
yeah.
No, I feel so positive about it. I mean, especially because we're having that phenomenon like getting closer and closer to turning 30. Like my perspective, of course.
Yeah.
Where people are like dropping off, and we're
you're not 30 yet.
I am 32 now.
Okay.
But we've been playing for like 7 years.
Right.
So as like entering year 4, entering year 5, all of a sudden we were losing people who got injured, who are afraid of getting injured, who moved away. People do relocate, and that doesn't make it easy.
Yeah.
People who like, it seemed like some people were still partying, and they used to be able to handle the hangovers when they were younger, but then they were partying just as hard when they're older, and then they were like not as willing to get out of bed the next morning, maybe tough. Not recovering.
It gets harder.
I feel like there are a lot of factors. It's not just everyone running to their families or whatever. It was like...
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
some of the years it was just like, the irresponsibility meeting the full Google calendar. Like there was, girlfriend expectations. Like that's like prime real estate, like Saturdays when you're hanging out with people.
Yeah.
Any loved ones, whatever it is.
Yeah.
People who you're interested in spending time with. Like a lot of people work. It's hard to find those moments. All the more reason I'm so grateful we found this moment.
Yeah.
We were able to get together. We put in more than an hour. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we flew.
That's pretty fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it went by. It was great.
Awesome.
Jacob, thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me, James.
Yeah. If people are interested in throwing the crown, if they'd love to check out more of your work, do you have a preferred place for them to purchase or maybe, look at selected pieces?
Yeah. You're welcome to obviously go to your local bookstore and you'll be able to order my book pretty fast, I believe. I definitely, recommend that. You can order it through Copper Canyon Press website.org. I think coppercanyonpress.org. I'm way behind on the times. I don't have a website, but
you don't need one.
You can follow me on IG at Jacob D. Saenz, and I'm on Facebook if you're into that. I want to be friends, I guess. But yeah, if you were to just Google my name and poetry, you would find some pieces of me that maybe you want to check out. And maybe if you're feeling so inclined and you want to spend some money on the book, please do.
Well, Jacob, thank you so much. Yeah. Until next time.
Thank you, James.
Take care of yourself.
You too.
All right. Bye, everyone.